Okay, so like many of you, I'm sure, I'm struggling to decide what plugin to choose as my free plugin that came with the CorOS 3.0. So I figured let's go through my process here in a video, really for two reasons. One, to get some feedback from you guys in terms of what you think about the plugins, and as I go through my process and what's important to me, maybe you might have feedback on that. But two, I think we're all struggling with this a little bit, and maybe going through it together will help not only me figure out what I want to do, but maybe it'll help you understand the plugins better and maybe point you towards the plugin that's right for you. So I think what we'll do here today is we'll go through the inventory of the plugins that are available. We'll kind of understand what they are, and maybe for me, I can narrow them down to which ones might work best for me, and also look at where they are in the development pipeline for being compatible with the Quad Cortex. And then we can narrow it down to a few options, and then we'll try those out and we'll make a decision. So let's start out by talking about the process that plugins go through to become compatible on the Quad Cortex. In general, it's a two-step thing. You've got all the plugins that exist. The first thing that needs to happen is they need to be upgraded to the X version. And then the X versions need to be made Quad Cortex compatible. So if we look at the list today, this is based on all the information we have to date, and it is currently August 2024. So right now we have two plugins that are compatible with the Quad Cortex. Those are the ones that launched with 3.0. And Neural DSP has announced a little bit of what's coming in the future. There's no timelines, but they've already announced that the next two X plugins to become compatible with the Quad Cortex are the Fortin Nameless and the Soldano. And those are scheduled for the 3.1 release. Now, we don't know when the 3.1 release is, but so the next release of CorOS will include compatibility with those plugins. The next major release after that, here I'm calling it 3.2, I don't know if that's what it's going to be, are going to include Nolly X and Parallax X. So that's what we know so far. We also know that the next two plugins to get upgraded to X are going to be the Cory Wong and the Petrucci. We have no timeline for that. And then the ones on the left are the existing plugins that have not been announced that they're getting upgraded to X. We don't really know anything about. So like I said, we don't know the timeline for any of these releases. But even if we assume that Neural DSP is going to get on, say, a quarterly release cycle, which to me seems, I'd be pretty happy with that. If they're coming out with a new version every quarter, I think that would be pretty good. I'm worried it might be slower than that, but let's say they could do it quarterly. That means the 3.1 release with the Fortin Nameless and the Soldano, you're talking somewhere around October. It means the Nolly X and the Parallax X, you're probably talking around January. That means the Cory Wong and the Petrucci, maybe you're talking next spring, March, April-ish. And we don't know anything about when they're going to put any of the other plugins into the X version, which is the first step they have to go through to be compatible with the Quad Cortex. Having said that, let's dig into each of these plugins a little bit here. And what I want to do is I'm going to bring up a great wiki page that someone created, and I'll put the link to this in the description of the video. So basically, they've brought together all the information about all the plugins here on one page. They've sorted it alphabetically. They talk about whether it's QC compatible. They talk about what are the pre-effects, what amps are included, what cabs are included, what are the post effects, what other features are there, what special features are there, kind of giving a sense of what's the genre that is slated towards, and then they've got a date of when was the latest release. So, looking through this, when I think about the kind of amps I'd be looking for, I tend to live in that kind of blues, classic rock, fusion a little bit. So, I like everything from Eric Johnson and Mike Stern, John Petrucci, Satriani, all the guys that I've done a lot of the preset videos for are kind of stuff that I like. So some of this stuff I'm going to kind of put to the side right away, just based on what they're focused on. So the stuff that's metal or high gain, I don't know that I'm going to be interested in. So if I go through it pretty quick, I can probably eliminate the Abasi. I don't think it's really something that I would want. And that doesn't mean that these aren't good plugins and that I couldn't find good tones in them. I'm just trying to pick a plugin that's maybe slated towards the kind of music that I play. So the Abasi, probably not. The Cory Wong, I'm not super interested in kind of his clean tones and his direct tones, but seeing the Dumble here for the crunch makes me consider this. This one, I think I have enough 5150 capabilities on the quad cortex, either through captures or through the model. I'm good with that. The Mateus Asato interests me a little bit. I'm a big fan of the Lone Star. The Nolly X I actually already own. Petrucci, I'm a big fan of John Petrucci and Dream Theater. I'd be interested in this. I worry that the quad cortex already has enough capabilities in this area. It already has good models of the John Petrucci amps. So I don't know that I would be interested in getting the plug-in there. The Plini I already own. Rabea is interesting. I'm a fan of the Victory. The Kraken does exist on the quad cortex, but the thing that Rabea brings is this synth capability. And that's kind of cool, and it's definitely different. My concern there is that it's so different that this might take quite a long time for them to port into the X version and into the quad cortex, because this is such a different kind of capability. The Tim Henson is interesting. Again, I don't know if it's the kind of stuff I'd be looking for, nor the Tom Morello. The Fortin stuff, again, you're getting into higher gain stuff that's not necessarily my cup of tea. Same with the Mesa Boogie. The Morgan interests me quite a bit. All of these styles I think I would like. The Soldano, this is another one that I wonder, I don't know if it's worth it here, because there's some good Soldano captures available. There's obviously good Soldano models on the quad cortex. And the Tone King is another one I'd have interest in, but this would be another one where I already own some good Tone King captures from Amalgam. I wonder if this is really going to add much. So if we go back to our list, so like I said, I already own the Plini and the Nolly, so those I don't need to get them. There's some I can just kind of eliminate based on, I don't think they're for me. So the stuff that's slated towards more metal stuff or bass, they're not really a good fit. And then there's a set that I kind of marked to the side just because I feel like they'd be duplicative of models or captures that already exist for me on the quad cortex. So that narrows it down quite a bit, and now really we're down to 3 that I think interest me in checking out. One is the Archetype Cory Wong, one is the Archetype Rabea, and the last is the Morgan Amp Suite. So these are the ones that I'm thinking I'm going to download the trials, and we're going to check them out, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I spent a few days trying out those plugins. I downloaded the 14-day trial, and honestly, none of them were really selling me, so I actually added in a couple more. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through them really quick, maybe just a couple of minutes on each. So this is not an in-depth dive into all of these presets. What I did is I played around with some of the presets that came with the plugins, and then in each preset what I did is I went to each amp model and tried to create kind of a good tone that I liked out of each amp model. So that's what we're going to run through here, is just kind of my pass through them and my thoughts on each, and then we're going to try to see if we can come to some kind of decision. So we're going to start with this one. This is the Morgan. So the first one I did was using the AC20 amp, and it ended up kind of at an edge of breakup. Kind of a nice tone. You got a couple overdrive options you could put in front of it. And then I did one on the P12, which I think is more of a Fender-y kind of thing. The low end's a little loose for me. So this amp doesn't really excite me that much. And then I really wanted to try out the SW50 because this is supposed to be dumble-ish, but again, it's real flubby on the bottom end. So I think the plugin's well made, but I don't think the amps are necessarily my cup of tea. So we're going to move on from that. So next up was the Rabea. And this is a plugin with tons of capabilities. I mean, as we start out, we got a nice kind of cleanish amp. I mean, I like this quite a bit. You can hit that with his overdrive. You know, so I'm liking that quite a bit. The crunch amp I like as well. But the high gain, it sounds good for a high gain, but I don't know that I would ever use it. But then the other thing with the Rabea is there's tons of the synth capabilities. So you get this whole synth capability up front. I haven't even gotten into exactly how to use this yet. I've just been playing around with some of the prepackaged presets. So this is really cool, and it definitely is a selling point for this plugin. But if I'm thinking ahead to how long it might take to port this onto the quad cortex, I think it might take a long time. I don't have any specific information about that. I'm just guessing, but to get this ported onto the quad cortex, I think it's adding a whole new capability, and I'm concerned it's going to be a while. And the Rabea isn't even on the roadmap to get the X update yet. So next, if we go to the Cory Wong, I've got two presets here. So I didn't really make anything out of the kind of this direct tone. It's not something I use a lot. Maybe I'll play with it more if I got this plugin. But for now, I'm just kind of sticking to the clean machine and the amp snob. So I did one that was kind of a clean platform. Sounds like this. Kind of a nice, warm, clean tone. I like it. And you can hit it with one of the overdrives. There's multiple. And you have a nice envelope filter. So that's kind of cool. And then for the drive platform, which is also supposed to be kind of a dumble-ish kind of amp. And you can hit that with a boost as well. I would like to get a little more presence out of that. There's a hollowness to it. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but I think there's potential there. So right now for me, this is definitely a contender too. So this is another one I grabbed. This is one of the other ones that's already compatible with the quad cortex. And there's a lot of good things being said about this online, and so I wanted to check it out. So here's a clean tone I came up with. So not super clean, but it works pretty well. And the OD I like. You can also use the dirt. So that can sound pretty good as well. And then I've got kind of a rhythm tone on the middle amp. And then you can throw some pedals in front of that to kind of get a lead. And then there's the high gain lead. So again, I don't know that I would use this amp a lot. Not much of a high gain player like that. So I think like the Rabea, it's like, it'd be an amp model and the plugin I probably just wouldn't use much. And then lastly, I grabbed the Mateus Asato. And this one, I think I like all three amps that are included in this. The AC 30-ish kind of clean amp. And it also has a couple overdrive options. Now this one with the controllable mid boost is nice. And then the OD2. And then we've also got a kind of an edge of breakup on a Lone Star. Always a big fan of Lone Star amp, and this one also sounds really nice, and you can kick it with an overdrive in the front. And then the high gain amp is pretty good too. This is a lead tone that's got the overdrive stacked in front of it. So if we come back to our list, I'm still unsure of which way to go. The only thing I know for sure is I don't want the Morgan amp suite. I just didn't really click with those amps. The Cory Wong, again, there's two amps there that I like. I don't know that I'd use the direct signals much. This one, the same kind of thing. I like two of the amps, but the heavy gain one probably wouldn't use much. Same thing with the Rabea. The nice thing about the Rabea is it has a lot of extra capabilities with that synth, but I'm worried it's going to take a long time for that to come to the Quad Cortex. The Mateus Asato I like quite a bit. It's got two overdrives. It's got three very usable amps. If you swap this one with the Cory Wong and you made the Mateus Asato the next up to get an X update, I probably would go for that. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Personally, I'm about to go on a little bit of vacation, so I'm going to be stepping away for a little while, and it'll give me time to think about it, and I can make my decision before the end of the month. So thanks for sticking around as I try to work through this decision. It's a hard one. Part of what makes it so difficult for me is I already own the Plini X and the Nolly X. It probably would be the top two on the list for me to get. So now I got to figure out what to get. I'm trying to balance what I like best, what's bringing something unique with the roadmap for getting these things on the QC. So I appreciate you sticking around, and thanks for watching.